Chapter 289. The Northern Sect Blade King 2. Chong Ryong, who had manifested her spiritual body, looked up at the blood-stained sky. When Chong Ryong, known as the 100-year vengeful spirit, was at the blue spirit level, it was nearly impossible to deploy the ghostly domain during the day when yang energy was abundant. This was because the dead belonged to the world of Yin. However, as Chong Ryong's spiritual power approached the indigo spirit level, known as the apex of vengeful spirits, she could deploy the blood domain of the ghostly domain to a certain extent even during the day. But it's difficult to maintain it for long. Due to the abundant yang energy and the wide range of the domain deployment, the spiritual power consumption was rapid. If it were nighttime, the situation would be somewhat different, but not now. He had to hurry. Sihe. As Chong Ryong waved her pipe, blood hands rose from the ground, further confusing the embroidered uniform guards and the eunuchs of the eastern and western depots who were in disarray due to the sudden situation. What the hell is this? How can something like this happen in the Imperial Palace in broad daylight? Don't be confused. It's all an illusion. Get a hold of yourselves. The commanders tried their best to boost their morale. However, this was not a mere illusion. The ghostly domain created by a vengeful spirit whose level had reached near the peak was literally a space of horror and fear. Puck. Cha-cha-cha-cha-cha. Arg. Let go. Let go of me. Chaos ensued due to the blood thorns and blood hands surging from all directions. However, this would not be visible to the eyes of the four at the center of the blood domain. The domain had been thoroughly isolated. Chong Ryong looked at Mok Jiongun. For now, I did as you wished, mortal. But will escaping really be possible? He was worried. The opponent was a monster who had crossed the wall of walls and truly reached the profound realm. No matter how much Mok Jiongun's demonic energy had increased to a level close to the profound realm, there was bound to be a difference compared to someone who had truly reached that realm. She recalled just a moment ago. Chong Ryong, is the ghostly domain possible? Ghostly domain? Yes. Can you temporarily restrain the embroidered uniform guards rushing in with the blood domain and also isolate the space with that fellow? It's possible. But I can't maintain it for long due to the abundant yang energy at this time. I see. We'll have to try to resolve it within that time. Wait, resolve it? Weren't you asking me to isolate that monster separately in the blood domain for a while? Yes. That's right, but including the three of us as well. You. Chong Ryong stared intently at Mok Jiongun. She had done as he stubbornly insisted, as if he had some kind of plan. However, the opponent was one of the six heavens, known as the pinnacle of the current martial arts world. Even if they launched a joint attack against such an individual, what were the chances of winning? Pachichichi. Dam Bekha, the sixth blood saint of the Nine Blood cult, who had gained immortality and lightning power by consuming the blood of the spiritual creature known as the Dragon Demon, raised her fighting spirit to the maximum. Even for her who had lived for a long time, a world completely dyed in blood was bound to appear terrifying and bizarre. However, there was something that caught her eye even more than that. To see that appearance again. What caught Dam Bekha's eye was So Yeren, the masked Six Offices commander, whose hair had turned red and who was holding a blade dyed in blood. The phenomenon of her hair turning red was none other than something that could only be achieved by the Blood Heaven's great Luo cultivation that only the Blood Patriarch of the Blood cult could master when reaching a certain realm. As a devoted follower of the Blood cult, she couldn't help but be moved by that sight. However, that moment was short-lived. The Southern Pacification Commissioner Gu Songbek made the first move. His target was not the two people in front of him. Chuck. I'm first. It was none other than herself. The blade that flew at a tremendous speed, unfit for a large broadsword, was set to behead Dam Bekha in an instant. She narrowly avoided it by launching her body back with lightness skills. However, as the blade brushed past her, it didn't completely slash through but stopped midway. Puck. What a monster. At this, Dam Bekha couldn't hide her inner astonishment. Retracting the force midway while swinging was not easy even for masters. Moreover, quang. The moment Gu Songbek's golden dawn moon stopped midway, the ground split and wind pressure erupted due to the vast true energy infused in it. To retract such force midway, he was indeed a monster. Pang. Gu Songbek, who had stopped the blade edge like that, rotated it and swung the blade in reverse, trying to target Dam Bekha's head once again. Then, Dame Bekha lowered her body to avoid the trajectory of the blade and, Pachichichi. She dug into Gu Songbak and tried to dig out his heart with her blood jade hands infused with lightning, using all her strength. However, at that moment, Gu Songbak lightly tilted his body to the side. He grasped Dame Bekha's wrist and kneed upward. Pock. Arg. With a single strike, her arm bent in the opposite direction, and the broken bone pierced through her elbow and protruded out. Enduring the pain, Dame Bekha tried to tear apart Gu Songbak's left hand, grasping her wrist with her blood jade hands. However, Pock. In that state, Gu Songbak pulled her wrist and her balance was shattered. Not missing this opportunity, Gu Songbak released the golden dawn moon he was holding and tried to pierce Dame Bekha's face with a blade chi created with his bare hands. Oh no! But at that instant, a blood-dyed sword tried to slash Gu Songbak's right arm. It was So Yeren. Unable to avoid it, Gu Songbak released Dame Bekha's wrist he was holding and retreated nearly 6 steps in an instant with graceful lightness skills. Pop-pop-pop-pop-pop-hack. As he tried to create distance, So Yeren chased after him, not wanting to miss the chance, and unleashed an ultimate move. Third move, Hidden Fish Form Sword. The sword initiated a transformation, and its trajectory wavered like a soft willow branch, simultaneously targeting 7 vital points on Gu Songbak's upper body. SWA. However, Gu Songbak surprisingly avoided her sword by moving only his upper body. Even in the midst of that, he made a gesture as if pulling his hand. He grabbed the golden dawn moon with empty hand interception, and in an instant he tried to split So Yeren in half. Faced with his tremendously tyrannical blade strike, So Yeren hurriedly raised her inner energy to the 10th level and lifted her sword to block it. King. Kook. However, So Yeren, who was inferior in inner energy, was pushed back while coughing up blood. Sir, I shall slash you like this. Gu Songbak, who was aware that he was far superior in inner energy, pushed So Yeren back even more strongly, intending to overwhelm her with this. Sir. Second move, Diving Clam Sword. At that moment, So Yeren, who was being pushed back, suddenly bent her knees and kicked the ground, explosively pushing back Gu Songbak's golden dawn moon and launching a counterattack sword strike. Hey. Using my own force? Interest glinted in Gu Songbak's eyes. It was the first time he had seen a sword strike that utilized his own tyrannical momentum with the blossom connecting branches of justice. Cha-cha-cha-cha-cha-cha-cha. As the invigorated sword energy rushed in like crazy, Gu Songbak also countered it. The clash of their sword and blade sent blue sparks and air-splitting sounds spreading in all directions. Cha-cha-cha-cha-cha-cha-chang. In an instant they clashed about 8 moves. Gasp. Gu Songbak hurriedly lowered his head. As soon as he lowered his head, the evil commandment sword covered in black energy brushed past his hair on the back of his head. Along with that, So Yeren also had to retreat back while deploying footwork. Otherwise, the sword Gu Songbak had avoided might have pierced her instead. Moreover, Mok Jayongun's sword wasn't the end of it. Gu Songbak, who had lowered his head in an instant to avoid the sword, had his pupils tremble for a moment at another sword flying from the left. This wasn't simply swinging a sword with the opposite hand. Different sword strikes were being unleashed simultaneously. The Moonless Void Sword Strike was unleashed with the right hand, while the Demonic Sword Strike was unleashed with the left hand. Unleashing completely different sword strikes with both hands? Putting aside the fact that both sword strikes were supreme, how did he master such a unique technique? Even he who had crossed the wall of walls couldn't do this. Gu Songbak couldn't help but inwardly admire it. This time, judging that he couldn't avoid it or do anything else, Gu Songbak stabbed the golden dawn moon into the ground, using it as a support to twist his body. Chuck. The blade of the demon's sword plundering killing sword slightly brushed Gu Songbak's left shoulder. Along with the burning sensation, he felt the demonic energy penetrating the brushed area. Demonic energy? He felt as if the demonic energy was further aggravating the wound. Sensing this strange discomfort, Gu Songbak hurriedly slashed off the skin of the brushed area himself. Chuck. At the same time, he launched his body back to avoid the sword strikes unleashed by Mok Jayongun. Pop-pop-pop-hack. He consecutively somersaulted 4 times in the air to create distance. Not wanting to miss this opportunity, the 3 of them launched their bodies towards Gu Songbak. Then Gu Songbak, while somersaulting, rotated his body and scattered projectile blade chi created with both hands to prevent the three from approaching. Cha-cha-cha-cha-cha-cha-cha-cha-cha. Mok Jiangun, So Yeren and Dam Bekha likewise blocked the flying blade chi with sword chi and claw chi. However, even if it was the same chi, there was a difference in the true energy infused, so they were inevitably pushed back. Cha-cha-cha-cha-cha-chang. Sir. This was the case for So Yeren, whose energy had greatly increased due to the Blood Heaven's great Luo cultivation, and it was the same for Dam Bekha, who utilized the energy of the spiritual creature's power, lightning. The true energy of Gu Songbak, who had crossed the wall of walls, was different in its strength. However, there was one person who broke through his attack and entered. It was none other than Mok Jiangun. Cha-cha-cha-cha-cha-chong. With the demon sword plundering killing sword held in his left hand, Mok Jiangun deflected the flying blade chi in reverse using the profound principle of the scripture of transferring true chi and advanced towards Gu Songbak with unstoppable momentum. This fellow, his inner energy is higher than the other two. Gu Songbak also sensed this, and he finally stopped rotating and made a gesture of waving his hand. Sihe. Be careful. At So Yeren's voice transmission ringing in his ears, Mok Jiangun, who was pushing forward, kicked the ground twice. This was the wind god steps he had secretly learned from Ma Arehayan. Sir. Mok Jiangun's figure split into two left and right. Sihe. And between them the golden dawn moon flew and passed through. He thought Gu Songbak had pulled the blade with empty hand interception, but soon the golden dawn moon flew like lightning towards one of the split Mok Jiangun figures. Chuck. Blade control technique? It was none other than the blade control technique. It was a technique that could only be unleashed by those who had crossed the wall of walls, also known as the Chi blade control technique. At this, Mok Jiangun reached out his hand towards the blade. Sihe. If he could interfere with the connected true energy, he could disrupt the blade control technique. He had already tried it once against the Chi sword control technique of the Heaven and Earth Society leader. So he tried to disperse the connection of true energy using the ritual of binding of the 8 thought-shattering techniques. However, as the Chi blade control gathered energy, blue Chi was infused into it. The energy that was trying to disperse further condensed, and the interference failed. Not stopping there, the blade stained with chi flew as if it were alive and unleashed a tyrannical blade strike towards Mok Jiangun, slashing his figure. Chuck. As one of the split images disappeared, Gu Songbak moved his hand. You're next. Then the golden dawn moon flew towards the remaining Mok Jiangun. Sihe. It was so fast that it seemed like a streak of lightning rushing in. However, at that moment, pachichichichichik. Lightning surged upward and the golden dawn moon flying due to the Chi blade control was deflected upward. Beneath it, Dam Bekha, the 6th blood saint, was stretching her hands upward. Her arm. Interest glinted in Gu Songbak's eyes. Dam Bekha's elbow, which had been broken with the bone piercing through the flesh and protruding out, had somehow healed. Annoying. Is it the power of immortality? Gu Songbak clicked his tongue at her tremendous regenerative ability. Soon, the Southern Pacification Commissioner Gu Songbak, who had created distance from the three, gathered his golden dawn moon that had soared due to the lightning with his true energy. Sihe. Holding the golden dawn moon, Gu Songbak looked at the three in turn and spoke. Although it's the Emperor's order, I set out with a light heart, but it seems that's not possible. Then it would be appreciated if you just stepped back. At Mok Jiangun's sarcastic remark, Gu Songbak chuckled. Then he thrust the golden dawn moon into the ground and spoke. Puk. I have my position, so that's impossible. Besides, it's not often I get the chance to face 3 martial artists close to the profound realm simultaneously. Go. It was the moment those words ended. Gu Songbak's energy raised to the 10th level of inner energy, soared to an incomparable level compared to before. At his tremendous momentum, the vigilance in the eyes of the three further heightened. The Northern Blade King Gu Songbak, one of the 6 heavens who had been holding back some of his power until now, was about to use his full strength. Chapter 290. The Northern Sect Blade King 3. The energy Gu Songbak raised with his inner energy at the 10th level was incredibly sharp, as if it would envelop flesh, and just by exuding it, it even created a whirlwind of true energy in all directions. At his tremendous momentum, the eyes of the 3 people were further colored with vigilance. Then let's start again. With those words, Gu Songbek struck the blade body of the Golden Dawn Moon that was thrust into the ground with his palm. Then the wide blade body of the Golden Dawn Moon cracked into 3 sections. Everyone was puzzled by his sudden action. But at that moment when Gu Songbek stamped his foot towards the ground, Kwang! The edge of the Golden Dawn Moon's blade body that was thrust into the ground split into 3 and floated upward. The blade split. Surprisingly, the Golden Dawn Moon was an abnormal weapon in which 3 blades were combined into 1. As Gu Songbek drew a line with his hand, the Golden Dawn Moon that had split into 3 and floated began to revolve around him as if swimming. Seeing this sight, Dame Bekha, the 6th blood saint, clicked her tongue. To unleash the Chi blade control technique not with 1 blade but with 3 blades. He has truly reached the pinnacle in manipulating true energy. She couldn't help but admire him even if he was an enemy. It could be said that just unleashing the Chi blade control technique with a single weapon alone consumed a great deal of true energy and mental strength. However, Gu Songbek was displaying the Chi blade control with 3 blades. Even during the old martial arts world era when she roamed, it was extremely rare for someone to reach that level of mastery with blades. It was that moment. Swish 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 swish. Gu Songbek, who had created a circular formation with the Chi blade control by rapidly revolving the 3 blades of the Golden Dawn Moon around him, launched his body towards them. Pat, Mok Jiongun, Dame Bekha and So Yeren moved accordingly. Judging that the 3 blades of the Chi blade control revolving around Gu Songbek were unusual, they maintained their distance without hastily closing in. Even Dame Bekha, the 6th blood saint, who had the deepest experience and knowledge among the 3, had never heard of a supreme master at the level of a great sage unleashing the Chi blade control in this manner. What the hell is it? It was an instant of puzzlement. If you won't come, I'll go to you. Say. At that moment, Gu Songbek's figure blurred. His blurred figure reached in front of them in the blink of an eye. Gu Songbek, who had instantly closed the distance, reached out his hand towards So Yeren, who was at the forefront. Cha-cha-chuck. Then the 3 revolving blades of the Chi blade control intricately interlocked and created a dazzling trajectory. What? It was as if 3 supreme masters were launching a joint attack. If they were to hold the blades directly and launch a joint attack, they would inevitably have to maintain a distance from each other to prevent clashing. However, that was not the case with the 3 blades of the Chi blade control. Since there was no risk of clashing with each other, the trajectories of the blades could be narrowed, allowing for a more precise combination. There's no gap. Unable to find any openings in the joint attack unleashed by the 3 blades of the Chi blade control, So Yeren thought she had no choice but to block it at once. So she firmly stamped her foot. Kwang. In that state, So Yeren pulled her sword and thrust it forward. True chasing and turning sword. Then, a whirlwind of sword intent arose from the tip of the sword and clashed with the joint attack created by the 3 blades of the Chi blade control. Cha-cha-cha-cha-cha-cha-chang. As the ultimate moves fiercely collided, a tearing metallic sound along with blue sparks scattered in all directions. The 2 ultimate moves that clashed head-on seemed to form a stalemate at a glance. However, since she was inferior in inner energy, So Yeren's feet were gradually being pushed back. Sure. But there was no way the other 2 would just stand by and watch this. Mok Jiongun and Dame Bekha, the 6th blood saint, tried to take advantage of the gap while narrowing their bodies to the left and right, aiming for Gu Songbek's opening as he unleashed the Chi blade control. However, this was a trap. Sihe. Gu Songbek's fingers moved slightly. At that moment, cha-cha-chuck. Gasp. Mok Jiongun, who was unleashing a sword strike, hurriedly twisted his body and pulled back. Chuck. In an instant, something sharp brushed past his neck by a hair's breadth. It was none other than one of the 3 Golden Dawn Moon blades. Puk. Ugh. Unlike Mok Jiongun, who narrowly avoided it and only had a slight cut on the side of his neck, one of the Golden Dawn Moon blades pierced Dame Bekha's thigh. She also somehow avoided one of the Golden Dawn Moon blades that flew at her by surprise. However, she couldn't avoid the other blade that followed. This won't do. But Gu Songbek wasn't satisfied with this. The one Gu Songbek thought he should kill first was none other than Dame Bekha. It was because of her marvelous recovery ability that was close to super regeneration. Gu Songbek chased after Dame Bekha, whose figure was disturbed due to her pierced thigh, grabbed one of the Golden Dawn Moon blades and tried to behead her. Even if she had achieved immortality, he didn't think her life would continue if her head was cut off. Pachicha kick. To keep Gu Songbek in check, Dam Bekha unleashed the claw force of her blood jade hands infused with lightning power. However, Gu Songbek lightly slashed it with blade chi and, chuck, he tried to behead her as well. The blade of the golden dawn moon was heading towards her neck without hesitation. Hey! Mok Jaeongun slashed down with the plundering killing sword and kicked Dam Bekha to the side, interrupting Gu Songbek's blade. Pok! Thanks to that, the path of the blade deviated and Dam Bekha was able to avoid being beheaded. Gu Songbek, whose attempt to kill Dam Bekha was thwarted, immediately reached out his left hand towards Mok Jaeongun. Then two of the golden dawn moon blades flew towards Mok Jaeongun. Cha-cha-cha-cha-charng. Mok Jaeongun swung the demon sword's evil commandment sword and plundering killing sword and blocked the two golden dawn moon blades. As the two golden dawn moon blades were engaged like this, Dam Bekha and So Yeren didn't miss this opportunity and unleashed their ultimate moves towards Gu Songbek. In response, Gu Songbek increased the size of the blade chi to over 5 zhong and simultaneously repelled them. Chaong. As the two were pushed back, Gu Songbek immediately created distance and waved his hand. Then the two golden dawn moon blades that were confronting Mok Jaeongun were recalled back to him. Gu Songbek shouted at them. Give up on killing one at a time. With those words, the moment Gu Songbek reached out his hand, the 3 golden dawn moon blades crossed and rotated with tremendous momentum flying towards them. The force of the whirlwind created by the 3 chi-infused blades. Kwa 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 kwang. It caused the blood that had pooled on the ground due to the blood domain to disappear and left a huge impact on the ground. If one were to be hit properly even once, their body would be torn to shreds and disappear. However, the problem was that the power of these golden dawn moon blades was the ultimate move of the chi blade control, so it would continue endlessly unless Gu Songbek stopped. Cha-cha-cha-cha-cha-cha-cha. The whirlwind of the chi blade control rotating in a blue light flew towards them as if a dragon was striding through the air. The power is unbelievable. Dam Bekha unconsciously swallowed her saliva. Then So Yeren's voice reached her ears. It wasn't just her. So Yeren's voice transmission also reached Mok Jaeongun's ears. Young master. We will block that. When an opening is created, aim for the Southern Pacification Commissioner with the profound principle of unification that overwhelmed me before. Pat. It was the moment those words ended. As So Yeren took the lead and launched her body, Dam Bekha the 6th blood saint followed. The two seemed to be heading to collide head-on with the 3 blades of the chi blade control that flew like a dragon. Foolish. Gu Songbek chuckled and soon brought his hands together. And when he reached out towards them, the rotational force intensified, and the blue dragon became even more colossal. The surroundings were on the verge of being split by the sharp wind pressure of the sword intent due to the tremendous momentum. Crack 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 crack. Grip. So Yeren tightly gripped her sword. Then she consecutively stamped the ground. Wind Shadow 8 types. At that moment the wind rose and her figure blurred, splitting into not 2 but 8 afterimages. Seeing that, Gu Songbek frowned. Afterimages were ultimately the result of high-speed movement, so if the figure split into 8, just how fast was she moving? Pop 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 hack. So Yeren's figure split into 8 like that, rushed towards the blue chi blade control dragon. Then So Yeren's 8 split afterimages spread out in each direction and stamped their feet on the ground. Kwang. The 8 afterimages of So Yeren who had stamped their feet, simultaneously pulled their swords and thrust them out. Then the whirlwind of red sword energy created from her swords surged towards the blue dragon. The red whirlwind surging from 8 directions became like a huge wind net, pressuring the blue chi blade control dragon. Cha-cha-cha-cha-cha-cha-cha-cha-cha-cha. Thanks to that, the dragon whose momentum was bound couldn't move an inch. This wasn't the end. Hiya. Pachichichichichik. Dam Bekha, who had leaped high towards the whirlwind of the 3-blade chi bound by the red whirlwind net, unleashed a massive penetrating force chi infused with the essence of her blood jade hands and all her lightning power. Lightning power possessed the properties of rigidity and paralysis. As the penetrating force chi of lightning struck the trapped chi blade control dragon, it gradually began to lose its rotating force. Yow! At that moment, Mok Jaeongun, who had been watching for an opportunity, launched his body. He gathered the 24 sword techniques into one and combined their power into a single point, aiming for his heart. Gasp! Gu Songbek's gaze, who had been concentrating on controlling the chi blade control, hurriedly turned. Gu Songbek's pupils trembled. The moment he saw the unified sword flying towards him at a single point, he could instinctively sense it. How can there be such a sword? It was unbelievable. This single sword strike Mok Jae-eun was currently unleashing was a realm that even he who had crossed the wall of walls had not yet reached. What the hell was going on? In an instant, Gu Songbek's mind became complicated. The ultimate move of the Chi Blade control unleashed with the 3 Golden Dawn Moon Blades consumed a tremendous amount of true energy and mental strength. The moment he released the force he had been maintaining, the impact would come rushing in. Grit. However, there was no time to think about that impact. As Gu Songbek released the force he had been maintaining for the ultimate move, he twisted his body. At that moment, Chaung. A black line brushed past him in the air. Mok Jae-eun appeared where it had brushed past. Along with that, the blue whirlwind dragon formed by the Chi Blade control that had been set to devastate the surroundings had disappeared. At this, So Yeren and Dam Bekha, who had barely held it back and exhausted most of their true energy, simultaneously looked towards Mok Jae-eun. Ha ha ha. Did it succeed? Then they looked at the Southern Pacification Commissioner Gu Songbek. He was staggering while holding his chest with both hands. Had the unified power penetrated his heart? Clang. Meanwhile, Mok Jae-eun dropped the plundering killing sword he was holding in his left hand. Then blood dripped from his left hand. Drip drip. Mok Jae-eun looked at his shoulder. His shoulder was half slashed, and if a little more force had been applied, he would have lost one of his arms. Seeing this, So Yeren wondered if the single sword strike that had gathered his power had failed. However, the staggering Southern Pacification Commissioner Gu Songbek soon knelt on one knee and splat. His entire left hand had been severed and blood was gushing out. It was a completely unexpected outcome. This was due to Gu Songbek's judgment. If it hadn't been in the midst of unleashing the ultimate move, he might have been able to avoid it or do something about it. However, Gu Songbek, who had suffered internal injuries due to the impact of retracting his true energy, was paralyzed for an instant. And in that instant of paralysis, a single sword strike with unified power aimed at his heart. Gu Songbek, who believed he couldn't block this unified power without any damage, made a choice. It was to accept the sacrifice. He concentrated all his energy on his left palm to block his heart and tried to slash Mok Jae-eun's shoulder in an instant to somehow reduce the unified power. This was the result of doing everything he could. Gu Songbek, who had lost his left hand along with internal injuries, quickly regulated his breathing and circulated his energy. Although he was injured, it wasn't a fatal wound. If he controlled his internal energy a bit, he could still fight. It was that moment. Crack 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 crack. The blood-red sky cracked, and the blood domain that had been overturning the surroundings disappeared. Chong Ryong, who was in the air, muttered with a fatigued expression. I've reached my limit. Maintaining such a wide-ranging ghostly domain during the day, not at night, was her limit as well. It's become bright. Murmur murmur. As the ghostly domain was released, the embroidered uniform guards and the eunuchs of the eastern and western depots, who had been in chaos and confusion, looked around in a daze. Then the commanders who discovered the Southern Pacification Commissioner, Mok Jae-eun, So Yeren and Dam Bekha in the middle of the devastated area shouted. Capture them! Capture them! At this, the embroidered uniform guards pulled themselves together and ran. So Yeren and Dam Bekha, who had exhausted most of their energy, had darkened complexions at the sight of the numerous warriors rushing in from all directions. With their remaining energy, it might be difficult to face all of them along with the Southern Pacification Commissioner Gu Songbek, who, although injured, was still formidable. As if reading this atmosphere, Gu Songbek opened his mouth. You absolutely cannot escape. Surrender. At his words, Mok Jae-eun picked up the dropped plundering killing sword with his other hand and said, We don't know that yet. You fought splendidly, but you are exhausted. On the other hand, even if I am injured, once I recover the flow of my internal energy, the situation will return to how it was. Yes, that's why we're going to leave now. What? It was that moment. Hyun-won. Mok Jae-eun looked up and called out something. It was that exact instant. Despite the blood domain being shattered, the ground suddenly darkened, and the sound of flapping along with gusts of wind abruptly swept through. At this, everyone looked up in surprise. What is that? A bird? What kind of bird is that big? The thing descending was an incredibly huge bird. However, it had a grotesque appearance that was vastly different from an ordinary bird. With the upper body of a bird and the lower body of a hornet with a stinger, this was none other than the demonic beast Humwon. Humwon was the only Aimee Mangryang that Mok Jiongun had tamed as his spirit beast. Get on the cart. At Mok Jiongun's shout, So Yeren and Dam Bekha, who were equally dumbfounded, reflexively launched their bodies towards the food waste cart. Mong Muyak, Sip Chun and Ma Are Hyen, who had already heard Mok Jiongun's instructions and were waiting in puzzlement while excluding the food waste container with Holy Fire Priestess inside, also lost their words at the sight of the colossal Humwon. When the hell did he tame something like this? While they were marveling like that, So Yeren, Dam Bekha and then Mok Jiongun had already boarded the cart. Then, as if it had been waiting, the descending Humwon snatched the cart with its huge talons. Flap flap. Humwon, who had snatched the cart like that, tried to take off into the sky again. At this, the commanders, who had been momentarily stunned by Humwon's appearance, soon shouted at the embroidered uniform guards. We can't let them go. Shoot arrows. We mustn't let them escape. At that command, the embroidered uniform guards who had bows hurriedly fired arrows. However, when Humwon flapped its wings, the arrows were instead deflected by the tremendous wind pressure. Pop-pop-pop-pop-pop-pack. D-dodge. Arg. An incident occurred where those who had been firing arrows were instead injured by the arrows flying back. Humwon had flown up about 20 zhong like that. Kook. The Southern Pacification Commissioner Gu Songbek spat out a clump of black blood. He had regained the flow within his body through energy circulation. Having quickly recovered his body, he stood up and immediately unleashed his inner energy, once again deploying the Chi blade control with the 3 golden dawn moon blades. You think I'll let you go? With a shout, Gu Songbek utilized the bow body projectile shadow technique to soar into the sky using elasticity. Seeing him flying up in an instant, So Yeren tried to draw her sword. To her, Mok Jiongun said, "Ah. It seems the message was delivered." What do you? Gasp. At that moment, So Yeren looked somewhere with surprised eyes. It wasn't just her. Dam Bekha, the 6th blood saint, also widened her eyes and looked in a certain direction of the imperial palace. Go. From there, an extremely ominous and evil energy was surging, and the energy was so strong that they couldn't help but have their gazes drawn to it. At that time, the pupils of Gu Songbek, who had been soaring into the air with the bow body projectile shadow, trembled violently. Your Majesty? He also sensed this ominous energy just like them. However, the place where it was emanating from was none other than where His Majesty the Emperor was. At this, Gu Songbek, without a moment's hesitation, used the golden dawn moon blades he was deploying with the Chi blade control in midair as a support and once again unleashed the bow body projectile shadow. Pang. Seeing Gu Songbek change direction in midair and head towards that place, everyone plopped down and let out a sigh of relief. What on earth was happening? In the direction of the inner palace, far from where they were. Go. In a palace where people rarely passed by, there was a being blatantly exuding an ominous energy. The peerless beauty in splendid attire was none other than the concubine Ho No, the 100-faced king golden 9-tailed fox. Openly revealing her energy, she lifted the corners of her mouth and muttered, "You owe me one Kyanma, heavenly demon." Chapter 291. Convergence 1. Humwon, also known as Qinyuan. It is one of the demonic beasts of Mount Kunlun, with the upper body of a giant bird and the lower body of a hornet. As with most Aimee Mangryang monsters' powers weakened during the day, but Humwon's flying speed was incomparable to a galloping horse. The pursuit team tried their best to chase Humwon as it soared high into the sky, but in the end, they could only watch its gradually disappearing back. Damn it! How are we supposed to chase that? In the first place, it was nearly impossible to catch something flying into the sky. Stunned, they eventually had to turn back. Flap flap. It seems they can't catch up. Mok Jiongun, who was watching the pursuit team receding into the distance with his excellent eyesight, said with a smile. At Mok Jiongun's words, Sip Chun clicked his tongue and asked, "My lord, when did you tame such a bizarre creature?" This? I had a lucky opportunity at the association." You mean the Heaven and Earth Society? At Mok Jiongun's answer, Sip Chun and Mong Muyak's eyes widened. As members of the Heaven and Earth Society, they had lived there for a long time but had never seen anything like this before. Meanwhile, 6 Offices Commander So Yeren took off the black mask she was wearing and spoke. Sir Mok is truly skilled in sorcery as well. Seeing that you even tamed such a monster. It was just luck. Can anyone tame something like this with just luck? Anyway, you young master. Speaking, she flinched and grabbed the cart. Hyunwon had slightly banked to the side while increasing its altitude, causing her to lose balance. Her gaze wavered as she looked down. Although she seemed like someone who wouldn't fear anything, she unexpectedly appeared afraid of looking down from high up in the sky. At this, the masked embroidered uniform guard Ma Arehayan asked with a worried expression. 6 Offices Commander. Are you I'm fine. It's nothing. Before Ma Arehayan could finish his words, So Yeren hurriedly shook her head in denial. Judging by the slight flush on her face, she seemed embarrassed to have shown fear while looking down. As if reading his subordinate's mind, Ma Arehayan turned his head away. Then he soon looked at the food waste container where the Holy Fire Priestess was. Ma Arehayan's gaze looking at it became strange. At that moment, click, Mok Jae-eun opened the lid of the food waste container. As the lid opened, the Holy Fire Priestess, who had to infer the outside situation based on sound alone, asked Mok Jae-eun with a puzzled expression. What happened? As you can see, we succeeded in escaping. Succeeded? Yes. Ah. At those words, her face lit up. The situation seemed to be progressing urgently, and she was curious about what had happened. But hearing that they had successfully escaped, her emotions were beyond compare. So she, who had been crouching with only her head sticking out of the food waste, tried to stand up. To her, Mok Jae-eun said, I'd like to advise you to just stay still. Didn't you say we escaped? I've been inside since earlier and my ears are ringing, and my stomach is churning uncomfortably, so here. At that moment, the Holy Fire Priestess's expression stiffened. Looking up, she couldn't hide her astonishment at the sight of the huge talons gripping the cart and Hyunwon's back. What in the world is this? It's nothing much. Should I say we're in a rather high place right now? High place? Yes. So it would be more comfortable for you to stay inside, right? Ah, I understand. Shall I close the lid for you? At those words, the Holy Fire Priestess, whose stomach was churning, soon nodded her head. It seemed better to see nothing inside the food waste container rather than continue looking at this. Mok Jae-eun, who closed the lid with a smile, turned his gaze. Ma Arehayan, who made eye contact with Mok Jae-eun, soon avoided his gaze as if flustered. Mortal, did you sense it too? At Chong Ryong's words beside him, Mok Jae-eun shrugged his shoulders. He couldn't help but sense it. Although he was sensitive to other things, Mok Jae-eun could always detect killing intent like a ghost no matter how much it was concealed. He had long noticed that the faint killing intent emanating from Ma Arehayan was directed towards the Holy Fire Priestess. He didn't know the reason, but there seemed to be some emotional factor. It seems we shouldn't leave them together. That's right. By the way, to think of utilizing the demonic beast Hyunwon like this, you're really something else. Should I say it was improvisation? Thanks to that improvisation you finally managed to escape the Imperial Palace. To the point of even using the golden nine-tailed fox, your audacity is truly commendable, mortal. Mok Jae-eun chuckled at her words as she clicked her tongue. Hyunwon was a contingency plan prepared for the worst-case scenario, but the golden nine-tailed fox could be considered a stroke of luck. It was fortunate that the golden nine-tailed fox helped them out of her usual whim. Otherwise they might have really been caught by the Southern Pacification Commissioner Gu Song-baek, known as one of the Six Heavens. Grip. Mok Jae-eun clenched his trembling left fist. Although his regenerative ability wasn't as great as Dam Baek-ha, the sixth blood saint, who had consumed the blood of a spiritual creature, his recovery was fast, so strength gradually returned to his hand. Seeing this, Mok Jae-eun let out a faint sigh. Even after absorbing the immense demonic power of the golden nine-tailed fox and gaining some enlightenment, the wall called the Six Heavens, known as the pinnacle of the martial arts world, was indeed vast. There's still a long way to go. There was a high probability that those who killed his grandfather were part of a huge organization. To investigate them, he either needed to build a force or possess overwhelming martial power, but judging from this fight, Mok Jae-eun concluded that he was still lacking. However, there was no need for disappointment. Through this fight he learned the extent of the Six Heavens' martial prowess and gained various insights and lessons from it. The ways to manipulate qi are endless. He closely observed how someone who had completely crossed the wall of walls utilized qi. As a result, he vaguely grasped his method of manipulation. If he utilized this, it seemed he could manipulate qi more effectively than now. Sihe. As Mok Jeongun slightly moved his finger, the hilt of the evil commandment sword sheathed in the scabbard faintly trembled. At this, the corners of Mok Jeongun's mouth rose. It was at that moment. Mortal. Mortal. Yes? Are you going to abandon that bald head and leave? Dash. The bald head Chong Ryong was referring to was none other than the Shaolin's expelled monk, demon-subduing fist warrior Jiajiam Zhang. Amidst the complications and the need to mobilize Hume, he had momentarily forgotten about him. Originally, the overall plan was to pull the food waste cart outside the outer palace and then use the carriage prepared by Jiajiam Zhang to escape Kaifeng. However, as they unintentionally escaped using Hume, they ended up leaving Jiajiam Zhang behind. I forgot. It seems so. Well, it can't be helped. It's not like we can go back now. Mok Jeongun glanced at So Yeren. Because of the sudden appearance of the Southern Pacification Commissioner Gu Songbek, she also ended up leaving the Imperial Palace, but she ultimately had to return. Therefore, it seemed he had to ask her to tell Jiajiam Zhang to come separately. At that moment, Chong Ryong suddenly spoke with an exasperated expression. You don't need to do that. What do you mean by that? Look below. At Chong Ryong's words, Mok Jeongun looked down at the ground in puzzlement. With Mok Jeongun's eyes, which were far superior to ordinary people's vision, he could see a dot-like figure moving on the underbrush that looked as small as a tuft of hair, and he could also hear a faint sound. The sound of Hume flying in the wind made it difficult to hear, but when he focused on his hearing he could hear that faint sound. Yaw! Can't you hear me? A voice shouting with inner energy reverberated upward. The owner of that voice, shouting at the top of his lungs, was none other than demon-subduing fist warrior Jiajiam Zhang. In a secluded forest nearby. Huff, huff. The expelled monk Jiajiam Zhang, his face drenched in sweat, stuck out his tongue and exhaled roughly. Although he had drawn the surrounding energy to endure, he had exhausted all his stamina trying to catch up with the flying Hume. This was the first time since mastering martial arts that he felt like he would die from using lightness skills. To him, Mok Jeongun said with a smile. You followed well. Huff stem. My lord, you told me to prepare a carriage and wait. Huff huff. What kind of act is it to abandon this bald head? I didn't abandon you. It turned out that way due to unavoidable circumstances. Unavoidable circumstances? What could possibly? At that moment, Sip Chun elbowed his side and whispered in his ear. You'll be surprised if you know what we went through. Surprised. Just listen quietly. Actually. Sip Chun briefly explained what had happened during the escape from the outer palace. Listening to this, the expelled monk Jiajiam Zhang's eyes widened as he retorted. What? You fought against the Northern Blade King Gu Songbek. No. I told you to just listen quietly, so why are you asking again? Sip Chun shrugged his shoulders as if in a predicament. However, despite that, he seemed quite proud. That was understandable because the person he had chosen as his master, Mok Jeongun, had confronted the Southern Pacification Commissioner Gu Songbek, known as one of the Six Heavens, the pinnacle of the current martial arts world, and even inflicted injuries on him, albeit in a joint attack. This couldn't be dismissed as mere luck. It was a tremendous feat against a supreme master at the level of a great sage who had crossed the wall of walls and reached the realm of the profound realm. If this spread to others, to the martial arts world, Mok Jeongun's reputation would also rise. Who knows, he might even become renowned as a rising master. For a moment, Sip Chun licked his lips. Come to think of it, Mok Jeongun was considered dead in the Imperial Palace. Therefore, regrettably, it seemed unlikely that his reputation would spread due to this incident. It was an opportunity to gain a reputation comparable to the 8 stars, surpassing the promising later generation masters, but it was a pity that it had to be thoroughly concealed since it was a mission related to the Imperial Palace. Meanwhile, Jiajiam Zhang asked Mok Jeongun in an excited voice. No, my lord. Did you really confront one of the Six Heavens? Hey, bald head. What? Suddenly hearing someone calling him, The expelled monk Jiamzhong turned his head with a fierce expression. The person who called him was Dam Bekha, the sixth blood saint. Did you just call me baldhead? Are you displeased when others call you that even though you refer to yourself as baldhead? What? Judging by the way you address Sir Mok as your lord, it seems you are his subordinate, so what kind of way of speaking is that, you brat? No, does this nun have a death wish to go to paradise so soon? With that beggar-like appearance, who are you calling a brat? Before he could finish his words, Dam Bekha revealed her energy. Go. If I can't call you a young brat, then what should I call you? Sensing this, Jiamzhong flinched for a moment. That was understandable because just from the revealed energy alone, he could tell that her inner energy was far superior to his own. What the? This nun. Just looking at her revealed energy, it reminded him of his master, the Shaolin Sutra Pavilion Grand Monk Gongzhan, to the extent that her inner energy was very profound. Who the hell was this woman? While he was puzzled, at that moment, someone knelt down in front of 6 Offices Commander So Yaren with a thud. It was none other than the masked embroidered uniform guard Ma Arehayan. At Ma Arehayan's attitude, So Yaren's eyes were filled with bewilderment. What are you saying right now? It's exactly as I said. I don't think I can return to the Imperial Palace with the 6 Offices Commander. Chapter 292, Convergence 2. Slap. The boy curled up like a shrimp as the whip struck him. With the continuous whipping, the boy's clothes gradually became stained with blood. The face of the boy, who had been screaming, twisted like an evil spirit as if resenting everything in the world. What did I do wrong? He was simply born a mixed blood. But is this a sin? Just because he doesn't have black eyes and his skin is a bit fairer, does he have to suffer discrimination and disregard like this? He didn't know how things had come to this. Slap. Slap. Damn mixed eye, die. Die. Someone like you is better off dead. With the continuous verbal abuse and whipping, the boy's mixed eyes trembled. Beyond pain and suffering, anger began to overtake reason, and it soon overflowed with murderous intent. I'll kill you. I'll kill you. The restraints on his arms didn't matter. It would end if he just bit off that bastard's neck with his teeth. The boy, driven by rage, watched for an opportunity with the eyes of a hawk. Then, when the hand that had been whipping him momentarily stopped from exhaustion, arg! With a scream, he charged at the slave trader who had been whipping him. There was only one goal: to bite off that damn bastard's neck. Even if he died on the spot, he was determined to kill that one bastard. Thud. However, before he could reach him, someone's kick tripped him and he fell. The one who knocked him down was the slave trader's bodyguard. How dare you, damn blue-eyed bastard, lunge at someone? Thud. The slave trader stomped on the fallen boy with bloodshot eyes. He didn't care whether the boy lived or died. He was only focused on venting his anger. Thud thud. Grip. It was too painful, but the boy bit his lips tightly and endured his groans. He thought showing his suffering would only help the slave trader vent his anger. Thud thud. Would it be better to die like this? As his consciousness gradually faded from the pain, he wished for death. It was that moment. Chuck. Thud. Roll roll. Then something rolled in front of the boy. Why you bitch? Chuck. Hot liquid splattered and soaked the boy's body. The boy, who had been curled up, slowly raised his head in puzzlement. His eyes saw something surprising. It was the head of the slave trader with bloodshot eyes, as if unaware that his neck had been cut off. What the hell just happened? The boy, who had been dazed while looking at the bastard's severed head, soon raised his head and looked at someone standing in front of him. It was a beautiful girl with red hair fluttering like blood. The girl flicked the blood off her sword onto the ground, glanced at the boy once and then tried to leave the tent. He didn't know why she did it. The boy, who had been stunned, soon staggered up in a hurry, ran to the girl and shouted, Please take me with you too. Please take me with you too." The eyes of the masked embroidered uniform guard thousand-men commander Ma Arehayan, who suddenly recalled his first encounter with the embroidered uniform guard 6 Offices Commander So Yaren, trembled faintly with a complex state of mind. She was his savior who had rescued his life from falling into the abyss and his master who had taught him martial arts. She had accepted him without any prejudice, and now he was telling her that he would leave her side, so just parting his lips felt heavy. He didn't want to disappoint anyone else, but especially not her, his master. At that moment So Yaren spoke. Why can't you return to the Imperial Palace? I apologize, young Mississippi. Don't just say you're sorry, tell me the reason. Young Mississippi. I told you to state the reason. Although she was speaking gently as usual, Ma Arahian, who had been with her for a long time, felt a faint agitation in her voice. With a heavy heart, Ma Arahian hesitated and opened his mouth. The Southern Pacification Commissioner saw me. If I return, I will become a traitor. It was a justification he had thought of in advance. No, it was not just a justification but also the truth from the beginning. Unlike her, whose face was covered with a mask, he had acted in his original identity to safely pass them through the outer palace. So he was in a position where he could not return to the Imperial Palace. If he were to return, he would be immediately caught by the Southern Pacification Commissioner. Although his face had not been exposed, it could cast suspicion on his master So Yeren, who had entered the embroidered uniform guard together with him. I apologize. I cannot become a burden to you, young Mississippi. Who says you're a burden? Do you think I can't protect you? I will become a shackle on your ankles. It doesn't matter. I will protect you in any way. I have already made my decision. Decision? Is it your decision to leave me on your own? No. I'm not just leaving. What? I wish to serve Sir Mok Jung-un here as my master. At Ma Arahian's words, So Yeren's expression stiffened. Ma Arahian was an upright and loyal man. He had been with her for a long time, so he was not only her disciple but also a colleague and like a younger brother. Now, without any warning, he said he would leave her side and enter under someone else, so she couldn't help but be confused. Why? At her reaction, Ma Arahian felt a pang in his heart. However, he soon gathered his thoughts and spoke. I apologize. Sir Mok Jung-un saved me when I was about to die from blood poison. So I wish to dedicate my remaining life to serving him. At his words, So Yeren closed her mouth. If he simply said he would leave because his identity was exposed and it would be a problem, they could have devised various means such as a human skin mask. However, if this was the reason, she couldn't hold him back. No, if she held him back, it would be disregarding Ma Arahian's decision. Commander Ma, no Ma Arahian. Young miss. I apolo. Enough. Why should that be something to apologize for? How can I stop you when you say you want to repay a debt of gratitude? Ah, young Mississippi. Ma Arahian, who had been bowing his head, closed his eyes. He still did not think he had fully repaid the favor he had received from her. However, the one who knew the truth about his father's death, which had long remained a lump in his heart, was right there. If he missed this opportunity, it might never come again. If there is another chance, I will surely repay your kindness. She was his master who had allowed him, a mixed blood, to live like a human being. Leaving her like this, he had no desire to return to her side again. He just wanted to repay her kindness in any way possible. Meanwhile, So Yeren approached Mok Jung-un, clasped her hands together in salute and said, Young master. Then I cannot be away for long, so I will return to the Imperial Palace now. Of course you should. If I learn any information about the mark, I ask that we meet. Of course, I will also share any information I come across. I will do so. Then I wish you good fortune. With those words, she was about to turn and leave, but she paused for a moment, then turned her head and said to Mok Jung-un, Please take good care of Ma Arahian. At her request, Mok Jung-un shrugged his shoulders. Accepting this as a sign of affirmation, So Yeren smiled bitterly and soon looked at Dame Bekha, the sixth blood saint. Then, Dame Bekha also clasped her hands in salute to Mok Jung-un, then tore off a piece of her clothing and handed it over. The piece of clothing had the prisoner number, 126, engraved on it. What is this for? Thanks to you, sir, the successor of the elder, I was able to come out into the world again like this. I will never forget this great favor you have shown me. I didn't intend it, so you don't need to be so grateful. Even so, if it weren't for you, sir, I would have never been able to come out. That fact remains unchanged. At her words, Mok Jung-un smacked his lips and said, Well, if you feel that way as a sign of gratitude, that suggestion. That is a skill that only the owner of our sect and clan can learn, so I cannot teach it to you. Before Mok Jung-un could finish his words, Dame Bekha flatly refused. Mok Jung-un, who had intended to ask her for the formula for casting the suggestion, licked his lips as if disappointed. It was quite an interesting technique, so he wanted to know the exact formula. Dame Bekha, who had handed over the piece of clothing, pointed to it with her eyes and said to the disappointed Mok Jung-un, "Even so, how could I not repay the favor? I intend to go to the Four Leagues Alliance, where the successors of our cult are said to gather for the reconstruction of the cult. If there is any work that needs to be done, even if inadequate, send this. I will rush to assist you in a single breath." At her words, Mok Jung-un smiled. Although she expressed herself as inadequate, she was a tremendous master close to the realm of the profound. Such a master said she would rush to help whenever requested, so he had gained a useful card. So Yeren and Dame Bekha, the sixth blood saint, went their separate ways. When they had left and their presence had completely disappeared, Mok Jung-un chuckled and soon turned his gaze to Ma Arihayan and said, "Now that they're gone, shall we hear the real reason?" At Mok Jung-un's words, Ma Arihayan's eyes narrowed through the gaps in his mask. His eyes were filled with bewilderment. "What are you talking about? You can't lie to me." Smolder. With these words, Mok Jung-un raised his demonic energy. At that moment, Ma Arihayan's pupils turned black with demonic energy, and he unconsciously revealed his inner thoughts, which he had been trying to hide. "Because of that damn old hag you abducted from the prison, my mother and that damn father of mine died." As soon as he finished speaking, Sip Chun and Mong Muyak hurriedly blocked the space between him and Holy Fire Priestess. Their goal was to safely bring Holy Fire Priestess to the Heaven and Earth Society. However, if the purpose of this masked embroidered uniform guard Ma Arihayan, who had pledged loyalty to Mok Jung-un, was to take revenge on her, they should never let him get close. What? Weren't we on the same side? The expelled monk Jiamjong, who had read the atmosphere, also raised his energy and prepared to intervene at any moment. At that moment, the Holy Fire Priestess staggered with a perplexed look. This can't be. She had a suspicion when she saw Ma Arihayan's mixed eyes. However, with his recent words, she could be certain of his identity. She spoke in a trembling voice. "Are you the son of Priest Mayera?" "Shut up." Then Ma Arihayan roughly tore off his mask and shouted at her. Despite his pupils being dyed black with demonic energy, his emotions had somehow become agitated. "Marahayan, I told you to shut that mouth." Ma Arihayan yelled and tried to launch his body towards her. At that moment, someone pressed down on his shoulder. Grip. Ma Arihayan tried to draw out his inner energy to shake it off, but the other person's inner energy was so strong that he was forced to kneel on one knee. Thud. Who? Ah. He wondered who it was, but it was none other than Mok Jung-un. Mok Jung-un, who had placed both hands on his shoulders, smiled and said, "It's troublesome if you act recklessly. Regardless of your circumstances, I didn't have you take her out so you could do as you please." Although he spoke casually, this was a clear warning. If he applied a little more force to his hands, it seemed it would not end with just crushing his shoulders. At this, Ma Arihayan endured the pain and opened his mouth. "My lord, if the disposal of that old hag to me, I will pledge my loyalty to with my life. Are you negotiating? He will be more helpful to you than that old hag." At his words, Mok Jung-un scoffed and sneered. Then he leaned close to his ear and whispered, "You value yourself quite highly. My lord, it's true. I can lay down my life for you as much as." "That's unfortunate." "What do you mean?" "The value of something changes depending on the situation. Thousand-Men Commander Ma Arihayan was quite useful in the Imperial Palace, but right now that person is more valuable to me. Pai Lord. So let's make this clear right here." Grip. Mok Jung-un's grip tightened. A small groan escaped Ma Arihayan's mouth from the pain that felt like his shoulders would shatter. "Ugh. I hope you erase the thought of touching that person from your mind until my business is finished." "Ha ha ha. I quite like Thousand-Men Commander Ma. But if you ignore my kind warning, I'm afraid I'll have no choice but to personally carry out the weeping beheading of Ma Su." Weeping beheading of Ma Su. It refers to the anecdote where Zhuge Liang, a military strategist of the Shu Kingdom, beheaded his cherished general Ma Su with a sorrowful heart to enforce military discipline after Ma Su suffered a major defeat by disobeying orders. It also meant that no matter how outstanding a talent, if they disobey orders and rules, they will not be forgiven. At Mok Jung-un's words, Ma Arihayan said nothing. Seeing this, Mong Muyak and Siep Chun were inwardly worried. If Holy Fire Priestess is no different from the enemy of his parents, will that embroidered uniform guard master simply accept his lord's warning? If he's going to be a variable, it would be better to separate them now rather than just warn him. He is someone who left his original companions and chose revenge. Would such a person obediently follow his master's orders? At that moment, Mok Jiongun removed his hands from Ma Arehyun's shoulders, which he had been pressing down. Is he really going to let it pass with just this level of warning? It was that instant. Thud. Then Ma Arehyun suddenly knelt on one knee in front of Mok Jiongun, clasped his hands together in salute, and bowed his head respectfully. Then he spoke politely with his head bowed. Ma Arehyun wishes to serve Sir Mok Jiongun as his master. I will stay by your side with my life and pledge my loyalty, so please keep your promise. What is this? The two couldn't hide their bewilderment at his sudden pledge of loyalty. They thought he would harbor resentment for forcibly stopping his revenge, but he suddenly pledged his loyalty. But what promise was he referring to at the end? Did his lord make some kind of promise? They couldn't understand what was going on. While pledging his loyalty with his head bowed like that, Mok Jiongun's words echoed in Ma Arehyun's mind. I hope you erase the thought of touching that person from your mind until my business is finished. The premise was, until my business is finished. Mok Jiongun patted Ma Arehyun's shoulder and spoke with a sardonic smile. I like that you're quick-witted,